Okay, I'm going to read some more of Modern Liberalism and the American Decline, Slouching Towards Gomorrah. Pick up where I left off. And remember, this is written in 1996. Though it cannot begin to match rap, TV undermines authority in gentler ways. Families are relatively egalitarian. At work, subordinates ridicule their bosses and usually prevail over them. Businessmen are depicted negatively. They were 3 times more likely to commit crimes and 5 times as likely to be motivated by pure greed as people in most other occupations. Politicians fare no better. The military suffered a great fall in prestige beginning in the 60s. Law enforcement officials are now shown as corrupt and as likely to commit crimes as anyone else. But criminals are portrayed sympathetically. This has begun to change. Police and prosecutors are now more often seen as heroes, which it has been suggested may be due to the widespread and justified fear of crime in this society. Perhaps popular culture is inevitably vulgar today and is more vulgar than any time in the past. Sex in sitcoms, previously pervasive, has recently exploded. A Super Bowl halftime show staged an elaborate sequence in which the central feature was Michael Jackson riffing and clutching his private parts for the edification of family audiences. But the television talk shows are perhaps more astonishing. There are about 25 hosts competing for audiences, and they generate about 100 hours of programs weekly. I learned from a Montel Williams show about the institution of shore parties. Now, he's talking about like that show Jersey Shore and all that. Talking about shore parties. People taking vacations. Engage in as much random sex as possible. And keep a score on a paper fastened to the refrigerator door. There was a show on women who marry their rapists. And other about mothers and daughters having affairs with the same man. In one Richard Bay outing last week, I met Karen, who admitted that she had offered her husband Donna as a sleeping companion. Caroline, who said her brother had slept with her boyfriend, and Gianna, who said she had slept with an old friend's fiancé. Gina presented her old friend with a birthday cake on stage before confessing to her, and got the cake back in her face. The audience whooped. That was a Jerry Springer show maybe or something. I don't know. But I'm going to get to the point here. I'm going to have to alter some of these words. Y'all can figure it out. I'm sure you can, but I can't say it. I'm not going to say it. It's too vile. The question is asked, where do the shows find people willing to appear and reveal their most tawdry intimacies? A better question might be, where do the networks find an estimated audience of 50 million people per week who want to watch such things as a 13-year-old boy bragging about having sex with a 26-year-old woman, and then being confronted on camera by his mother? But this is merely blatant vulgarity. There's worse. Television becomes the equivalent of rap and movies on music television videos, and some of the paid channels. MTV is the more pernicious because it usually part of the basic package that subscribers automatically get with a cable service. They pay nothing extra unless the parents are vigilant. Children will watch it. A rap song, for example, is accompanied by a video that may or may not illustrate the words of the song. Images often follow one another at breakneck speed. Images of guns, killings, police baiting, and sex. Like the movies, MTV is all more dangerous because it's brilliantly produced. One evening at a hotel in New York, I flipped around the television channels. Suddenly, there on the public access channel, was a voluptuous young woman, naked, her body oiled, writhing on the floor while fondling herself intimately. Meanwhile, a man's voice and a print on the screen informed the viewer of the telephone number in the limousine service that would acquaint him with the young woman of similar charms and productivities. I watched for some time, riveted by the sociological significance of it all. Shortly after that, men only slightly less nude advertised homosexual prostitutes. Now, this was a commercial. When I was on the road as a musician for a living, I saw many of that too. That's art. The art, the form of art, by adopting many of the techniques and much of the content of popular entertainment, is becoming popular entertainment. And popular art, paintings of tomato cans, is taken as high art. James Gardner notes the incongruity that art has never been more admired, more adulterated than it is now, that it draws larger crowds and attracts more money than ever before. And yet the art itself is impoverished. Here, as in popular music and television entertainment, it is not that there is no genuinely serious art at all. It is that there is much that is meaningless, uninspired, untalented, or perverse. Perhaps the 60s brought in a fascination with the perverted, but lack of meaning was evident well before that decade. In a prestigious New York museum in the early 50s, a piece of black burlap nailed to a board was presented as art. In a London museum, I thought I had come upon leftovers from a carpet laying. Strips of brown felt in a heap in the middle of the room. Then I saw that pile had a title. I asked the sculptor on the Yale faculty what his sculpture, which looked like a half-melted tree stump, represented. He said quite seriously, "Whatever you want it to be." Yale University was willing to support a man whose idea of art was a three-dimensional Rorschach test. It is thus no cause for surprise that our great universities now offer courses on comic books. These may be taken as manifestations of an individualism barren of substance, expression of selves that are empty. But what are we to make of art that is both popular and perverted? For instance, a plastic puddle of vomit, piles of papier-mâché excrement jars of the artist's actual excrement, a painting entitled Poop Faith, in which crudely drawn excrement emerges from 4 abutting anus butts. We are informed that a reinvigorated London art scene began to be the envy of the contemporary art world in the late 1980s, with such offerings as a dead 14-foot-tall shark floating in a tank of formaldehyde, a portrait bust of the artist in his own frozen blood, and Everyone I Ever Slept With, from 1963 to 1993, which is a small tent whose interior is lovingly applicated with the names of her past loves and bedmates. The object is always, one supposes, is to shock the middle class eagerly to buy it. As we will see shortly, fascination with such materials as urine and excrement seems to be characteristic of today's middle class, if that is any longer the proper term for such people. See my time. All right, I'm going to have to start altering his words here. The hostility to traditional culture was manifest in the arts long before the 60s. Anyone who thinks that flirtatiousness nonsense, the obscenity in the arts are wholly recent. NEA-sponsored affairs, managing editor of the New Criterion writes, should look back for a moment at some of the numerous avant-garde moments that captured headlines in Europe from the turn of the century through the 1920s. Reviewing a book that praised the Dadaist movement for subverting the values of middle-class society, Kimball remarks, consistent with its attack on middle-class values, it is a fascination with violence, the scatological and the obscene. This it shares with its close cousin, surrealism. While this is undoubtedly true, Gardner says that art began to direct its anger to the middle-class state in the last quarter of the 18th century. It does appear that the proportion of art that assaults middle-class values is far higher than today than in the days of Dadaism and surrealism. When the object is to attack middle-class culture by delivering shocks to its standards, and when that culture keeps revising its standards by assimilating each new outrage, it is necessary to keep upping the ante by being even more shocking. It seems clear, however, that large sections of the middle class, like drug-resistant bacteria, are approaching a state of being unshockable. People like blood and guts in this society. Look how people gawk on the interstate in a horrific car accident. They want to see death. They want to see blood and guts. Fascinated with it. Everybody wants to see something bad. I'm saying everybody as society. Unbelievers. want to see bad things happen to other people. It's entertainment for them, and they want to see it in their daily life. I'll read more from this. There is so much stuff in here that'll blow your mind that this man was not popular in 1996, and there weren't many books written on the decline of America coming. Well, y'all might have heard of some other authors, but I haven't. Till next time.